Welcome! In today's video I'm finally getting a chance to fix Dura Ace 9150 with loose motor brackets. That is by far the most common issue found on Di2 units, specifically 11 speed. I'm going to take you step by step how to do it, what to do and what not to do, what preventative measures we can take, and also because that specific unit came all the way from Australia, I'm also going to do something about the scratch on the body. Today we're fixing Dura Ace RD-R9150. Welcome to the Di2 GP YouTube channel. Welcome. In today's video we're going to fix a Dura Ace 9150 RD-R9150, and as you can see, or you cannot see, but the problem is loose motor brackets. This is by far one of the most common faults, so pay attention. So as you can see, the motor is making noise but nothing happens. So that unit was sent to me all the way from Australia. So what we're gonna do today, we're going to fix that scratch by polishing that, or sanding first that scratch, then polishing it. I'm gonna use the black paint to spray it and then clear coat the entire section, so obviously that's not going to peel off. Then I'm going to take the motor apart and fix the brackets. I fix those two screws using plenty of Loctite. Then I'm going to use conformal coating, so this is to prevent any water. In a case water is going to get inside, it's not going to shorten a circuit on a PCB board. So as it's open, I'm going to do everything what can be done to prevent any future issues with that. As I mentioned before, these are security screws, so these are Y3. However, because there was a lot of Loctite on them, it's very difficult to take them apart. In the previous videos I've mentioned you could buy a Y3 bit, something like that, but that not always works. I also purchased a Y3 or S2. I'm not sure obviously if you can see that. So that's the unit, so that's a Y3. So that one has flat head, that one is almost like a Phillips screwdriver with 3 arms. So that one works sometimes. I've managed to loosen these two, but this one I need to drill out. So what I use a 3.5mm drill and take it very slowly, take it easy. When you drill it out, then as soon as you drill one screw out, you go to vise or some kind of a vice grips, and then you can undo that screw. So without no further ado, I'm going to take it apart and you can watch, and if you have any questions, please comment below. So that one was too tight, so I've rounded it off, so I'm going to drill it out. And watch for your thumb. Try to keep it in the center. So as you can see, that started breaking up, so I try to use pliers and lift it off. Just like that. So you need to make sure obviously that stud is going to stick it out, otherwise it's going to be quite challenging to take it off. So that can come out. As you can see, these are two clear. And then obviously I'm going to clamp it in a vise and undo it, but as you hear, make sure obviously that one moves very easy, because if there's a resistance here, that means that is seized, so you need to put plenty of WD-40 or silicone spray to make sure obviously that is nice and loose. That bit here, so that's a preload adjuster, make sure you don't lose that, so put it aside. I'm gonna give you an update when I undo that. So as you can see, this is what I've removed. So that was slightly squashed. This is what I clamped it in the vise, and now that's ready to be painted. But I need to obviously sand that scratches, deep scratches first to make it flat. Then I'm gonna hit it with primer, then black paint, and then clear coat. I use just a normal one stage or one component acrylic paint because yeah, I don't have a compressor. Well, I do have a compressor, but don't have a spray gun properly, and I'm just making it slightly better. It's not proper restoration, but definitely looks better than how it arrived. So now I've got rid of that deep scratches. I've used a Dremel with a 220 wheel, and now I've used just a wet sandpaper 800 grit. You need to be careful not to keep it too shiny, so you need to have some scratches to provide some grip for a primer. Now I'm going to, because obviously I'm not going to sand it in between, so I'm just going to use a very fine layers of paint. So I need to use just a Scotch-Brite to matte that finish, obviously to provide grip for clear coat. And then I'm going to obviously sand a top bit here, entire face, bottom bit. Then I'm gonna mask everything off, and I'm gonna spray it in consecutive layers. As you can see, that's been matted, so there's no deep scratches. You need to be careful with Dura Ace because that's anodized, so the layer is very fine. So you need to be careful. Only thing you need to do is just to kind of provide some grip or some base for clear coat, so that doesn't peel off when it's done. So the next step is to mask it off. So we're gonna expose just the silver bit. I'm gonna hit it with a white primer, just obviously see that's been covered slightly. Then a black base, and then everything with clear coat. So this is how it should look like. Obviously, that bit, it's irrelevant because I'm going to spray it from the top. Then obviously I'm going to mask off that area, and obviously to expose just that bit, but you need to be mindful that obviously anything should be, or everything should be masked off. So that's ready to be hit with a very fine layer of primer. Just to be, the reason I'm using primer because obviously you shouldn't use a base on a raw metal, so I just need a primer, just an edge primer, to get a good adhesion to metal. And this is what you need, obviously just a small bit. Then obviously I can remove that off. As you can see, you need to leave the layer of tape so it's slightly lifted off, so you're not going to end up with a sharp edge. But I'm going to obviously let it dry and then mask it off again. So this is ready. So as you can see, the edge is sticking out. So when I'm going to spray it from this side, obviously the main paint the thick area is going to be on the front, and then obviously you're gonna slight overspray, which should be nice for blending. So this is sprayed. Now I'm going to remove the masking tape from the rest of the body. Obviously going to wait for the paint to off gas, dry off, and then I'm going to hit everything with clear coat. The repair on the body, as you can see, you can still see the line, but it's I think it's much better. That's my opinion. So when installing the bike, it's definitely going to blend in. So it's definitely better than it was. Some people prefer battle scars, but I do prefer touched up. So I just use dummy body to keep that in place, because otherwise you may get a scratch on this spot. But obviously I'm gonna take it inside my house, because in my shed it's very cold. With that, you can either use a puller to remove that, or you can clamp it in a vise. So what I usually do, I clamp that in a vise like that, then put a hole punch here, and then tap it out. So obviously that's going to be clamped in a vise, and I'm gonna use force to tap that out, and then you can remove that. So the cam has been removed, as you can see. So that's a good time now. Everything is sealed to give it a nice clean. Same for this one and that one, and for the body. And then I'm going to open it. And so the next step is to open it. I haven't found a better way to do it rather than make small incisions. So as you can see a seam going all the way around. This has been ultrasonically welded. So I use a knife with a small notches made on the side, and then applying even pressure, you just go around and cut it open. You need to be careful because obviously there's a PCB and wires inside. Also, you've got a locating pin here, and I'm pretty sure it's somewhere here. But again, if you don't go too deep inside, then you don't run into risk of damaging it. And also, if you use Dremel or any high-speed power tools, because of friction, you're going to melt that plastic here. And then when you come down to sealing it again, it's going to be quite challenging. It's not going to look neat, and also you run a risk of creating some micro holes or micro pores, which can let water inside. But yes, so I'm going to first clean it off, and then cut it open, and I'm going to show you what's inside. So now I've cut it open. So this can be just lifted, always lift them from the front. That can go to the side. Same for this one. And the problem is, these bolts here coming loose, and motor disengages. So that moves. So that's supposed to be fixed together. So I'm going to remove everything and then show you what you can do to prevent future issues. So to take it apart, you got 6 Phillips screws. They are all the same, so you don't have to worry to put them in a specific order. You can inspect PCB if there's any damage. So obviously that one looks nice and dry. So when I'm done with everything, I'm going to clean it with isopropyl alcohol and then hit it with conformal coating, just to provide an extra layer. So these SMDs won't be damaged if for some reason water is going to get inside. So that's your gearbox. As you can see, everything is nice and dry. For my liking, too dry. That's supposed to be lots of grease. I know Australia, it's a lot drier than UK, but still. So you can inspect all gears. Teeth should be nice and sharp. And then the next step is to inspect those teeth. So as you can see, they're supposed to be nice and sharp. Again, that warm gear, because obviously that's going to engage with that gear here. Let me just see. So again, if you got a bit of a play on your remake, meaning obviously when you move the parallelogram, obviously there is a lot of movement here, that can be caused by these teeth down the bottom. Those here, they may be slightly worn, so obviously you have to replace it. The problem is you cannot find a replacement, or you cannot buy them. You can find them in old units, and that is exactly the same all the way from 6870, so first generation 11-speed Ultegra, all the way to the latest 12-speed. So they all exactly the same. GRX 817, M50 and the 950 or XT, XTR, they have completely different gearboxes, so you cannot use that. So to put it together, you got a motor bracket, and one of the really important bits, obviously, as you can see, that is the shaft, and then at the end you got a tiny little washer which should go here and between, obviously, gearbox. If you lose that one, what this may do is obviously that's going to introduce lots of play. So currently that one has, again, I cannot describe that in millimeters, but very little play. If you remove that washer, obviously that play is going to be significantly higher, and that can introduce unnecessary movement in your rear mech. So to put it together, I use a Loctite 243. Again, I'm not sponsored, you can use whatever you want, as long as, well, maybe don't use super glue, but even stronger if such a thing exists. A stronger thread locker would be nice, because obviously I don't imagine you'll be planning to take it off again. And again, just start. You cannot put it wrong way around. These holes are not aligned perfectly, so obviously they can go in only in one location. Again, you can do it up. I don't have any torque setting, but I just put it as much force as I can. I've been doing it for a long time, and I haven't managed to strip any of this, so that should stay. Again, test that spins nicely. Then before we start putting things together, the first things first is we're going to service O-rings. So you can remove that bushing. There's one little O-ring here, same on the top. Again, another O-ring. These two O-rings are the only thing which keeps water away from the internals, so that's why if you use any very aggressive cleaner, degreasers, this is where they may perish or they may crack and they start introducing water. And as soon as water gets in, it's very, very difficult to get it out, and usually that results in a damaged PCB. And if PCB is damaged, there is not much you can do, I'm afraid. Again, I use a white water repellent grease, and I'm never shy with grease, so I put loads of it. Better be safe than sorry. Make sure obviously the O-ring is in seat, a little bit more. O-ring goes in, and just to be again on the safe side, you can put in gear, so that sits nicely. Then we can put a little bit more grease here, because then that's going to be difficult to access. Motor goes in, again only one way around, you cannot mess it up. That's fixed. Then a little bit more grease. Then with this gear, you just need to put it on top. So grease also helps with providing some resistance, so that's not gonna slide down. You can inspect these gears, but again, these are nice and clean, so I'm not expecting any damage. If there was a significant impact, you can remove that gear and make sure obviously that bushing here, come on, zoom in, that bushing here sits nicely. Sometimes when there is a side impact on your rear mech, that may be completely ripped out, so then obviously you need to remove that bracket. But like I said, this one is looking quite healthy, apart from the fact obviously they didn't use enough Loctite in the factory. So we're going to put a little bit of grease. Oh, how strange. Australian rear mech and little spider. That wasn't staged, by the way, and I think that didn't come from Aussie land, because it's very small. So I'm going to continue with that, and then spider is going to continue on the journey. So what you do is you have to put it like that, and for the time being we're not putting that gear inside, so that's just going to be put in location, because obviously we need to make sure everything is set to 0. So just to keep it in place, we're going to put one screw in, and again I have to keep my hands clean, I don't want to damage or spoil the PCB. So again, for purpose of adjustment, one screw is enough. We can connect cables, so the motor goes on this side and the external supply goes in the middle. That's plugged in. Again, we can plug it to my test rig, and now it should work. So as you can see, should be 10 clicks. So now we know it works. Obviously make sure you shift all the way down, so the 11th sprocket or 11th gear, 11 teeth. Now what we need to do is to obviously set micro adjust to 0. So I went into adjustment mode. I'm gonna shift all the way to the one side, and then you got 16 clicks in opposite side. So that means now you got plus minus 16 on either side, and that shifted all the way to the bottom. Then we can obviously take the PCB and gearbox out and install the main gear. It is really important, you need to disconnect unit from the power supply, because if you were to have it connected and leave that PCB board, that's going to confuse hell out of that sensor. Again, that gear out. Little bit of a grease top up. Same goes here, and also the bottom of the gear. And now the fun part. So you need to put it like that, hold it with two hands, and then drop everything in. And if you're lucky, that works. So that is a little bit of too much of the gap, so let's try one more. Too much. I think that should be perfect. So we're talking about 2, maybe 3 millimeters. Now testing again. As you can see, that is ideal gap, so that's gonna give you enough room to micro adjust, obviously 16 clicks on this side or 16 clicks on that side. So now I'm happy, everything is okay. I'm going to disconnect the unit. Just make sure obviously I shift it all the way to the bottom. I'm going to disconnect it, remove this screw. Make sure obviously these are nicely plugged. I'm gonna clean that with isopropyl alcohol and obviously this has to be remain connected, and then I'm gonna hit it with a layer of conformal coating just to provide anti-corrosion protection. So as you can see, that's been nicely coated with a thick layer of, including my fingers, with thick layer of anti-corrosion agent. So that's going to pretty much seal all paths, including an exposed component. So if the water is gonna get inside, despite obviously my efforts with grease, that should stand a chance, and maybe not going to die as soon as a factory one would. So I'm gonna let it dry for maybe next 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna put everything together. So that's been out for 20 minutes, so I'm going to put it together. Again, with these screws, I done up just hand tight. Again, I would imagine there is some specific torque, but because they go into plastic, that should be fine. Final bit, just do some tied up with cables, because obviously I'm going to go with a soldering iron around the edges. So it's nice to keep them tucked away. Similar to what I did on the bottom, I put loads of grease here, and then I'm going to close it up. Make sure you align those pins. And again, the main reason I'm using a knife instead of any Dremels, because obviously, as you can see, that is nicely sealed. So when I go with my soldering iron to close it, I can maintain nice and tight and closed seam. So before we shut it close, final test. And again, make sure you shift all the way to the bottom. Now we're disconnecting it, and I'm going to seal it with a soldering iron. So everything has been sealed, as you can see, nice and consistent seam. I use just a normal soldering iron with a very fine tip. Make sure if you do it, or when you do it, you wear a full face mask with replaceable filters. This is plastic and carbon fiber or glass fiber, so it's not very healthy for you. That's why I'm not showing it. I'm not confident or comfortable sharing that in case someone makes mistakes. I don't want to be blamed. So I'm gonna leave it till next day. So in this final part, I'm going to put everything together. So the scratch has been repaired, servo has been fixed. I put a temporary cage just to make sure I can adjust it. I'm using stainless steel, a black coated or black passivated 2.5mm screws, 10mm long, and they are Torx T8. So all screws are installed using Loctite. So again, that's fixed. Make sure obviously everything is nicely aligned. That operates. So the step number, or the next step would be to, you need to install that on a bike, and then using a top limit screw, so that is a high, you need to set the jockey wheel so it's in line with 11 tooth sprocket or 12 tooth, or the smallest sprocket. And ideally what you would do is put the chain on, and then obviously keep pedaling and then move up and down, so you find a mid spot where there was no rubbing. So that would ensure that, because obviously what we did previously during assembly of servo, I set it to ±0, and then assuming that's going to be bang on in the middle, when we install that cam, that should be nicely aligned with, so as you can see, this is what you can see, or what you should see. So these holes should be nicely aligned. If that is at a angle like that, that's going to result in possibly plus minus 6 or 7 in a trim. So I'm going to move, install it on the bike, adjust it, and then we're going to continue. So I've adjusted it. As you can see, that is now sticking out slightly more. Then as a rough guide, that notch should be slightly off, yeah, pretty much should be aligned with that little corner here. And then the purpose of adjustment is if we're going to install that cam, as you can see, that hole is nicely aligned. So what I'm going to do now is obviously I'm going to take a device, and similar to how I've extracted it, I'm going to put a 6mm socket here, and then obviously use a hole punch from this side. Make sure that the hole punch is smaller than the plastic bit, so it's resting on the axle. So you're going to hit the axle, not that a carbon fiber reinforced plastic actuator arm. So the next update will be when I tap that in. So that's been tapped in. As you can see, the gap is small, obviously. As long as you cannot see spline, that should be absolutely fine. Step 2 is to install that. So that needs to sit like that. Then we're installing a spring, loosely like that. And then that should just go by hand. And then the final screw. And again, the final step would be to install that spring. So I use a L-pick and hook it like that. And that goes in. So obviously now you got tension. So we can clean it off. Connecting it. And test. So just like that, everything is being done. The only thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just hook it up to a diagnostic software. Make sure obviously this firmware is up to date. Run test before I package back and send it over to a hopefully happy owner. So thanks for watching. That was a repair video with the most common fault of a loose bracket. By far this is the most common issue with Di2 11 speed. So the same process applies to 12 speed, 11 speed, first generation, second generation. And although obviously that's Dura Ace, but pretty much internals are pretty much exactly the same. So if you have any questions, please comment below. If you think I could improve on any processes, again, comment below. And this is most likely my final video for this year, so I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And until next time, safe riding, and then make sure you got Di2. Take care and bye bye.